Hello, I think this is the first time in this vlog that I'm talking to camera. So when I'm filming this vlog, I'm in sort of a particular couple of weeks here. My partner and I are gearing up to, in about 2 weeks now, go on a 12-day trip to Budapest, Hungary, which I'm just over the moon about. I studied abroad there in 2016 as a young, naive 20-year-old. I will insert a picture over here if I can find one. And I haven't been back since. And while I'm incredibly excited for this trip, we are still finalizing some planning for it, hashing out some of the finer details like public transportation, transportation to and from the airport, figuring out what we want to see, what days would be best to go where. I will of course be vlogging that experience, so stay tuned for that. But along with finalizing all of this planning, I had wanted to pre-film a bunch of videos so there wouldn't be a gap in my posting on this channel. And so right now I'm currently looking at scripting and pre-filming and editing and schedule uploading about 5 videos here in the next 2 weeks, which I think is doable, but I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't feeling the pressure a little bit. Plus, of course, I am also a full-time office manager in DC, and there are a separate set of deadlines and things that I need to get done for that in the next 2 weeks, and setting things up so things run smoothly when I'm away. When I had initially planned to film a spring reading vlog, it was definitely supposed to be a bit more of a laid-back kind of garden video and quiet reflection kind of a vlog, and I think I might just have to make that a later video in the coming weeks because, as mentioned, I'm sort of on a time crunch as far as when I can pre-film videos here, and so you're getting me sort of when I am able to film this vlog and have it fit into the upload schedule that I currently have. So today is Tuesday and I'm hoping to film here for the next couple of days and take you along with me, give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of pre-filming and getting things ready for my trip, along with the reading that I'm attempting to fit in here and there. 2 books that I'm currently reading. I have a fiction book, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, that I have very slowly been making my way through, enjoying and intrigued by, but I haven't had as much time as I would have liked to really sink my teeth into this one, as well as a history book related to our destination, Budapest. This is Budapest, Portrait of a City Between East and West by Victor Sebastian, and I do not have a lisp. I'm just attempting to pronounce this Hungarian man's last name in a Hungarian way, that being when there is a singular S in a word, it makes a sh sound, hence why Budapest is actually supposed to be pronounced Budapest. But as the title of this book suggests, it is a history book of the city of Budapest, which when I previously studied there and up until now I had sort of a cursory knowledge of, especially when it came to sort of the more modern 20th century history of the city. But this book covers over 2,000 years of history of this city, from the fragmentary remains of Paleolithic people that have been found in the area, the Celtic tribes that had called this bend of the Danube River their home until the Romans took over, to the nomadic Magyar tribes that eventually settled in the area and to which the native Hungarians sort of trace their lineage back to, etc. I'm really enjoying this book so far, and I think it's one that I would also like to continue to read for this vlog and sort of check in as it pertains to sort of the planning that I'm doing, as well as my attempts to refresh my very rudimentary Hungarian. So it's currently about 8:30 p.m. here. My goal for tonight is to finish writing some notes for a video that I'm hoping to film tonight, which I believe will be the video that comes out following this one, which I think is the Hungarian book haul and author TBR that I'm putting together. So yeah, that is my plan for tonight. Fingers crossed. Wish me luck here. Okay, so I just finished filming the Hungarian book haul and author TBR video, and it's now 11:30 and I'm really tired, if I'm honest. I feel like there were definitely moments while filming that video where my brain was just not computing and I had to say things 10 times over to say them right. But through the magic and power of editing, I'm hoping that it all comes out all right. I think it's definitely time for me to call it a night here. I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Good morning, it's the next day and I'm about to head out for work. I currently have you balanced on the top shelf of my bookshelf as a little impromptu tripod. You can see my cat Molly is very sleepy on the bed over there. I wish I could join her, but I need to head out here pretty soon. It's another cold, rainy day here. been having several of those this week so far. After the past couple of weeks, we've had some really nice warm days, so it's kind of a little bit of a shock to go back to this temperature and this lack of sunlight, but I definitely want to try and make time during my lunch break today to read a little bit of Never Let Me Go. In the midst of juggling all of these different things, projects, deadlines, I definitely want to make concerted time to sort of just set aside and do something that I enjoy that for the most part isn't focused on my current deadlines and goals. So I'm going to do my best to carve out that little time for rest, rejuvenation, and reading, and to let you know how it goes, but I definitely need to get out the door here. Hello again. I figured that it was probably time for me to do a check-in here for this reading vlog. It is now Sunday afternoon. It has been a hectic week, I'm not gonna lie. It's been sort of it's felt a little bit like a marathon, but I feel like I'm in a pretty decent place filming-wise for all of the pre-filming that I'm trying to do. I just have 2 videos to script, film, and edit in the next, how many days? 7 or 8 days, and I think that is doable because they should be on the shorter side and have less graphics involved, so fingers crossed, along with this video that you're watching now. But back to the actual reading update here. So I am now nearly about halfway through Never Let Me Go, and I definitely was finally able to sort of sink my teeth into it a little bit more. I definitely tried to pick it up a couple times this week, and just there was so much going on that I didn't feel as engrossed in the story as I would have liked to have been, so I sat down for a good chunk of today and read a chunk of this and definitely feel more invested in the story now. I went into this book with what I believed to be not that many spoilers. There was a spoiler that I was aware of, but I wasn't sure how it fit in. I will not tell you the spoiler. We're following a narrator who is picking through a lot of her childhood or growing up memories at this interesting boarding school in the English countryside, and it's her picking through her memories and relating them to you, all the while weaving in bits of her current day life. It's a non-linear narration, which I think is really well done in this case. The way that Ishiguro goes about it is he will sort of explain one thing and then have the narrator say something along the lines of, oh, and that ties into this other event. And you're sort of drawn to read, what comes next. You want to know, oh, how does this relate to that? Or he has a way of these subtle cliffhangers of, oh, you want more information? You're gonna have to read the next page, which I've appreciated. Something that I wasn't expecting from this book is the sort of underlying level of tension that is drawn throughout the narrative. I would say the narrator and the way that the story is unfolding is done in a very delicate way, a very subtle way. And again, there is this sort of beautiful underlying taut line of something being pulled through where you aren't sure what's off, but you feel like something is off. And the spoiler that I think I had sort of been clued in on, I had been suspecting that it would be sort of a final reveal, sort of a spoiler, like a sudden plot twist at the end, but no, we are made aware of it about 80 pages into this book. The spoiler having to do in part with some of the underlying tension of this novel, from the beginning you are sort of here and there giving these little hints and clues as to something being somewhat off. The overall picture might look somewhat normal and nostalgic, but there's something in the corner where you're what's that? That doesn't feel like it, that feels weird. But you can't quite put your finger on it. Again, I won't mention what the actual spoiler is, but I will say that it has to do with the fellow students that our narrator grew up with at this private boarding school in a way. There's this background sense of otherness when it comes to these children. They don't have parents that are mentioned of. There is a sense of separateness, of otherness between the children that are growing up at this school and their teachers or their carers, and as well as the outside world. And so far, I think Ishiguro has done a really wonderful job of drawing out that tension and that sense of uncertainty and feeling like there's this bit of information that would make everything click, but it's sort of on the periphery, like outside of like your initial scope with what's going on in the first third or so of this book. There's part of a section of this book that I think I want to share with you that I've been thinking about for the past couple of days since I read it. And it's a scene where our narrator encounters a character called the Madam, we can suppose is somewhat in charge of this school or has some sort of control over this school, but visits sort of infrequently. She doesn't really interact with the students. Our protagonist has a brief encounter with the Madam. I would say solidifies her understanding of this otherness between her and her fellow students and people from the outside world. We don't know what that is yet. It's a very clear moment, depiction of it that I've just been thinking about the way that Ishiguro depicted it for the past several days. It's sort of been kicking around in the back of my head. I'll read you the last part of the paragraph where it takes place. Thinking back now, I can see we were just at the age when we knew a few things about ourselves, about who we were, how we were different from our guardians, from the people outside, but hadn't yet understood what any of it meant. I'm sure somewhere in your childhood, you too had an experience like ours that day, similar if not to the actual details, then inside in the feelings, because it doesn't really matter how well your guardians try to prepare you. All the talks, videos, discussions, warnings, none of that can really bring it home. Not when you're 8 years old and you're all together in a place like Halashem. When you've got guardians like the ones we had. When the gardeners and the delivery men joke and laugh with you and call you sweetheart. All the same, some of it must go somewhere. It must go in, because by the time a moment like that comes along, there's a part of you that's been waiting. Maybe from as early as when you're 5 or 6, there's been a whisper going at the back of your head saying, one day, maybe not so long from now, you'll get to know how it feels. So you're waiting, even if you don't quite know it, waiting for the moment when you realize that you really are different from them, that there are people out there, like Madam, who don't hate you or wish you any harm, but who nevertheless shudder at the very thought of you, how you were brought into this world and why, and who dread the idea of your hand brushing against theirs. The first time you glimpse yourself through the eyes of a person like that, it's a cold moment. It's like walking past a mirror you've walked past every day of your life, and suddenly it shows you something else, something troubling and strange. Wow. That definitely has been a scene and a moment in this book that has really been sticking with me. I'm now very close to being halfway through this book, and I'm at the point where in the narration, the protagonist who is looking back and narrating this book, we're sort of reaching more of a point where she and her fellow students are about to leave this school that they've been raised in their entire life and enter the outside world and interact with the outside world. And there is this sort of unease and underlying tension. Now that they have more of an understanding of what their difference is, why they were brought into this world, and what fate has in store for them outside of the walls of Halashem. So that's where I am with this book currently. Definitely want to read more of it tonight and hopefully finish it tomorrow if I can. I'll keep you posted on how it goes. As far as life update things go, I, like I was saying, it felt like last week was a bit of a marathon, and I may have overdone it in certain areas, and I'm trying not to overdo it this week because I don't want to burn out right before my trip, but also this week for work is just going to be a very busy week. So I think my plan is to sort of go a little bit lighter on some of the background creative things, make space for a lot of my energy being taken up by work and sort of all of the things that are converging on this week for work. And overall, just trying to remember I don't need to take things at a breakneck speed, that I have time, and even if I don't get a few things done, that's okay. But if you are also someone watching this video who feels a bit overwhelmed by life and everything on your plate at the moment, I see you. Something that I've been trying to remember to tell myself is that I'm proud of myself, that I'm proud of what I've been able to achieve, and to keep the things that I have been able to get done and check off the to-do list in mind, along with the things that I still have yet to do, instead of just only focusing on things that I haven't gotten done, because that's not good for my mental health. But I will pass that reminder off to you and also just say, I'm proud of you. You've got this. We've got this. Breathe. Breathe. I'm also definitely saying this as a reminder to editing Lillian, who probably needs to hear this. Yeah, that has been one of the lessons of this week, or a life lesson that I have been revisiting this week, of finding balance and time management, and remembering that I don't need to go at breakneck speed constantly, that it is much more beneficial for myself and everyone involved if I find a sense of balance, of rest, and being able to rejuvenate, recoup, and be able to come back fresh the next day or the next time, as opposed to constantly keeping my head down and just working until I collapse. That is a bad habit of mine, but I think that'll be it for this check-in today. I think that lighting will work. Fingers crossed. It's a little yellow, but hey folks, I figured that it was probably a good time for me to do a final check-in for this vlog and let you know where I'm sitting with the two books that I mentioned at the beginning. I mentioned this book in the intro to this video and then haven't mentioned it since. I feel like Never Let Me Go has definitely eclipsed this book for this reading vlog, but I'm definitely looking forward to picking this back up again. I was really enjoying it when I was reading it. It's a really informative history book, but at the same time not being overly wrought with academic jargon or theoretical analysis. It's very readable, while at the same time it feels really well thought out. Definitely enjoying the commentary and asides and little personal anecdotes that Victor Sebastian incorporates into this book, whether that be some of his own personal and family history with the city and the country of Hungary, to quotes from historical figures or writers who are from, lived in, or visited the city. This book feels like a really interesting tapestry that's being woven as you're reading it. I think that's in part to the really interesting, nuanced, and expansive history of this city, but it's also definitely a positive description that I would give this book and Sebastian's writing. This is the first nonfiction history book that I've picked up in a while, and it has been really refreshing in a lot of ways. One, I think it's a really fun and interesting, engaging book, but for me it's also been a reminder that even though I'm no longer in an undergrad history program, that by no means do I have to give up on reading history nonfiction books, whether they be sort of on the more commercial end or towards the more academic theoretical end that I was being assigned when I was in college. And in that way, this book in some ways has felt a little bit healing to read, and in reading this having sort of this personal permission unlock to myself of really getting to dive in and engage in a text like this in a way that I haven't in a really long time and I have really missed. I have been annotating the heck out of this book. I have been taking notes. It's been a permission and a reminder for how I enjoy engaging with historical text, historical nonfiction in general. Metaphorically, it feels like the equivalent of finally getting to really sink my teeth deeply into something really satisfying. So I will keep you posted in future videos on how the continued reading of this book goes. And then the main book that I've been reading throughout this vlog, and I'm still reading. I'm, I think, just under 100 pages shy of finishing this book. I'm still incredibly impressed by Ishiguro's narration and storytelling in this book, and I think I'm gonna put this book down as I continue to talk about it because I'm kind of gesticulating with it. Everything that I've said previously about that book is definitely holding true. At its core, it's very subtly but deeply unsettling. It feels like you as a reader are sort of circling around this one point that hasn't been fully revealed. You know it's likely something that is awful and horrific and likely traumatic. You and the main character, or the narrator of the story, aren't able to look at it fully head on, but you're getting sort of these like offshoot tendrils of information that are sort of dropped here and there, and it begins to build this larger unsettling picture. Another thing about this book that has definitely unsettled me is the relationship between the narrator, main character Kathy, and her best friend Ruth. Their friendship and their relationship feels and has felt very unsettling to me. It feels like there's this push and pull between them of coming up to the edge of a conflict or a fight or a pulling the curtain aside and having this larger facade of their lives, of their purpose, kind of come crashing down. Ruth is a character that definitely gets caught up in the fantasies that Kathy and a lot of the other children that they grew up with entertain as a means to try and understand their world, try and understand what's going on around them. Ruth has a tendency to take those fantasies a little bit farther than some people are willing to follow her, and I think that's where some of the tension between her and Kathy comes from. How far either of them is willing to go in order to maintain the other person's coping mechanism of fantasy and white lies and daydreams without getting completely lost in them, or taking them too far to where they inevitably would come crashing down and cause social suicide, in a sense. Ruth is a character that's presented to us as one of Kathy's best friends. I don't quite know how to put my finger on it, but she, in a lot of cases, kind of gives me the creeps. I think in part because a lot of the times she can come off as pretty manipulative, leveling social ostracization of Kathy from her and sort of their larger friend group if she doesn't play along. I feel like the depiction of this friendship, this relationship, is tapping back into some of my own memories of growing up and having instances within friend groups where there was an element of emotional or social instability, a sense of something boiling beneath the surface emotionally, and it can feel like a balloon about to burst. I don't know if that was Ishiguro's intention, but for me it's adding a whole other layer of unsettlingness to my experience of reading this. But so far I'm still incredibly impressed by this book, enjoying it in the sense of I am reveling in Ishiguro's storytelling, in his depiction, in his writing. Yeah, no, it's definitely one that I will be thinking about for quite some time. I'm definitely also considering doing a single book review dedicated to it and just getting to sort of sit and unpack it more, and also be able to give you my final thoughts on it as well. Yeah, it has been a long week. If you've made it to the end of this reading vlog, I really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed getting to follow me around for about a week here and get a little peek behind the scenes of what's going on. I think when I'm filming this, I have about 4.5 days until we leave for Budapest. I feel like I'm still in decent shape. I don't think I'll finally relax until I'm actually sitting on the plane. But yeah, folks, that is it for this spring reading vlog. Tell me what you're currently reading for spring in the comments below. If you've read either of the books that I talked about in this video, I would love to chat with you about them in the comments, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.